Julie Jones says first.
Heavenly Father, we pray for our borough of Fylde, for all its people, residents and visitors of all ages, and for all the issues it faces. We give thanks and celebrate all that is good. We pray for all those who work for the council and support our councillors and borough. We pray for Heather, our mayor, and all the councillors entrusted with the care and responsibility of our ward. Those here tonight and any unable to be with us. May they know your presence and your care for them. Father, we hold before you the meeting of the council tonight and ask for your guidance, wisdom and inspiration to fill hearts and minds during discussions, debates and decisions, that all may be conducted in love, respect and service to our communities and one another. We ask all this in the name of our Lord and Saviour, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Right, agenda item number 1, declarations of interest. Do any members have any personal or prejudicial interest to declare on our meeting tonight? No? Okay. Agenda item number 2, confirmation of minutes. I will propose from the Chair that the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 16th of May 2012 be confirmed as a correct record.
I will second those minutes.
Are we all in favour of those minutes? Thank you. Item 3, Mayor's announcements. First of all, I would like to thank everybody who came to my Civics Sunday at Trails. It was a bit of a wet day, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, and thank you, Reverend Julie Jones. It was a wonderful service. I've had a very busy time since I became Mayor. I've met some wonderful people, and I'm about to start fundraising very shortly. And I'm sure you've seen the flyer, and I hope if anybody has any unwanted raffle prizes or bottles or gifts, or can help out at the war weekend for a couple of hours, I would be very grateful. And I would just like to say the Open Golf, I believe, was a great success. I was fortunate to be there for the 4 days, and I don't play golf. But I spoke to people from all around the world, from South Africa and Australia, and it was nothing but compliments for the organisation and the traffic management. So my thanks go to everybody involved. Okay. Agenda item 4, Chief Executive. Do you have any communications to report?
No communications this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Agenda item 5, questions from members of the Council. There's one question from Councillor Rhodes this evening. I will invite Councillor Rhodes to read out the question, which will be answered by the portfolio holder. One supplementary question based on the response to the question is permitted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is this on? Okay. Could the Chief Executive advise me what the total expenditure has been in preparing and hosting the Open Golf Championship by the following bodies: the Borough Council, the County Council, the LSP and any outside grants.
If I could ask Councillor Fazakerley.
Mr Mayor, Councillor Odes, fellow councillors, I intend to answer these questions by looking at what might be termed direct spend on open golf projects. My response will be structured to coincide with the question, that is, the spend in 4 separate sections. Unfortunately, I am not able to give any figures for Lancashire County Council, as we have been informed that if a councillor wishes to make such inquiries, it should be through an FOI to Lancashire County Council and not via the local authority. There are other capital regeneration projects that were planned as long-term initiatives that would have happened at some point, regardless of the Open. If Councillor Odes wishes to view this expenditure, it is detailed on a spreadsheet to which I shall be referring and which I am very happy to give her after the meeting. So we come to direct costs to the Open. And I will start off with the costs of Fylde Borough Council, which total £141,438. And the breakdown of this is as follows. St Anne's Station, £15,000, Lytham Station, £17,500, Ansdell and Fairhaven stations, £10,000. The Pristine Place project, £14,938, and arterial routes and signage, £13,000, which includes £4,000 towards pedestrian signage in Lytham and £9,000 towards highway signage throughout Lytham St Anne's. Marketing, media, promotion and hospitality, £71,000, which includes last year's Open expenses when a team of our officers went down to promote the Open here. Website, literature for both years, and a media consultant who was employed for a short time this year. That brings a total of £141,438. That is Fylde Borough Council's. The LSP, a total of £40,000. St Anne's Station, £15,000. Lytham Station, £15,000, Ansdell and Fairhaven stations, £10,000. And the last category, other agencies. St Anne's Station, £5,000, Lytham Station, £5,000, and that comes from the South Fylde Community Rail Partnership. Aerial routes and signage, £15,300, which is made up of £12,500 from St Anne's Town Council and £2,800 from the Open for All grant scheme managed by LCC. Media, marketing, promotion and hospitality, £10,000, which was from Team Lancashire funding, which paid for the members' tickets, the Saturday civic hospitality and the World Media reception. And that makes a total of £216,000 £1,738. So I can give you the total for each project with the 3 donors, if you like, broken down, if that would be helpful, Councillor Rhodes. Okay, total St Anne's Station, £35,000. Lytham Station, £37,500. Anstall and Fairhaven Stations, £20,000. The Pristine Place project, £14,938. Arterial routes and signage, £28,300. And marketing, media, promotion and hospitality, £80,000. At this point, Mr. Mayor, I am tempted to speak a little about the benefits of the open golf. I don't know whether you wish me to do that or whether you would prefer that I would just leave it there.
Yeah, the question's been answered, so we'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Councillor Rose, do you have a supplementary question?
Can I thank the portfolio holder for a very good and concise answer. I'll just come back by saying I know that the golf is a very important event for showcasing Lytham and Anne's. The hotels and restaurants are very busy, which of course they are at this time of the year, but retail, I believe, had one of the quietest weekends in recent memory. And that's why I believe that we need to know the accurate figures of not only how much and where money was spent, but also accurate figures of how the coastal area benefited. I've heard various figures bandied about economic benefits, 90 million, 50 million, 35 million, but at this stage I think it's a case of a finger up in the air, with a guesswork, really.
Is this
yes, I'm coming to the second question. And so really what I'm going to ask now is, are we intending to carry out an overview of the income and expenditure that has been used for this competition? And if not, may I suggest that it would be a valuable exercise so that in the future, when we get other open golf competitions coming here, we'll know what was successful, what was not successful, and what was worthwhile, and we'll be able to save money, energy and time. So I'm asking whether we can have perhaps an overview and scrutiny looking into the successful elements and the less successful elements, and getting an absolute breakdown of exactly what the economic benefits were.
Thank you.
Thank you for that supplementary question, Councillor Oates. I can understand the reference to the town centres, or certainly St Anne's seemed reasonably quiet to me, although John Moxham, the chairman of the Chamber of Trade, has gone into print saying it was an excellent week for the town, so I don't quite know how those two reconcile. The Sheffield Hallam University post-tournament project will provide details of how much the open golf was worth to the region. The methodology used is sophisticated and robust, designed to only identify economic contribution attributed to the open being held. It will purely be money and investment as a direct result of the open. The work is a follow-up to the pre-tournament study that estimated the value to the region would be 87.7 million. Given the attendance figures and the fantastic media coverage, it is highly likely that these estimates have been realised, and the results of the research are expected to be published in September 2012. I would like to just mention, and it doesn't really need saying, but as Councillor Oates and the rest of my colleagues here will realise, that there are benefits to this area of the open that are impossible to quantify. For example, the benefits of the incredible media coverage, from that down to the benefits of people who let their car parks for the day. We shall never know the true figures as far as that sort of thing is concerned. But I can assure Councillor Oates that the Sheffield Hallam team will be looking into every aspect of this and making a report to us by September. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. But there's no real comeback, but perhaps in September when we get this report, perhaps we can discuss it again when this report comes back in September. Okay? Item 6, questions from members of the public, and I believe there are no questions from members of the public this evening. Item 7, I'd like to invite Councillor David Eaves to propose this item, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under the regulations of the Investigatory Powers Act of 2000, the Council must have in place a system of authorising, recording and reviewing any surveillance that is carried out and covered by the Act. The system must comply with the Act's regulations and codes of practice. It must have its own RIPA policy. Legislation under RIPA requires annual review and re-adoption of the RIPA guidance by the full Council. The report asks the Council to adopt the updated guidance and provides information in the Council's use of RIPA in 2011 and 12. And I ask the Council to note the information contained in this report about the Council's use of surveillance powers and to update the policy. And I do have a seconder.
Thank you.
I stand to second that proposal.
Thank you. So, have we any speakers? Does anybody want to speak? Right. Not contentious. So we'll just take a vote. All in favour? Thank you. Agenda item 8, I'd like to invite Councillor Eaves again, please, to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Council is required annually to confirm the committees that it wishes to appoint and allocate membership of certain of these committees in accordance with the principles of political balance under the Local Government Act. I would also like to say that the Council is required to confirm these committees, and also with respect to a standards committee, I would like to propose that the membership is increased from 6 to 7. On your tables you should find a revised version of the tables showing allocation of seats. This has the effect of providing an extra seat on this important committee to a non-aligned independent member. The Council is also requested to appoint members to the Member Development Steering Group. With regards to vacancies within these committees, on the Community Focus Committee there is a vacancy for a Conservative seat, which I would like to appoint Councillor Barbara Nash to. With regards to the newly appointed Standards Committee, the Conservative Party have 4 seats within that committee, and I'd like to nominate Councillors Donaldson, Cox, Wilder and Ackers to those seats. With regards to the Management Committee, again there are 4 Conservative allocated seats, and I would like to appoint Zackley, Buckley, Andrews and myself to that committee. If I may also go back to the Standards Committee, with the allocation of a non-aligned councillor to that committee, I'd like to reaffirm Councillor Hayhurst as sitting on that committee. And that confirms all the vacancies, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. And your seconder? Councillor Sackley?
It gives me pleasure to second that, Mr Mayor.
Okay. Right, we have some speakers. Councillor Oates?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, I'd like to put forward our nominees for the standards, and they are Councillor David Chad and Councillor Keith Beckett. The Chief Officer Employment Committee, I'd like to nominate myself and Councillor Hopwood. And then I have some changes to some of the other committees. The Policy Development Committee, I would like to replace Councillor Julie Brickles with Councillor Maxine Chew. And the Community Focus Committee, I would like to replace Councillor Maxine Chew with Councillor Julie Brickles. Councillor Hopwood will be replaced by Councillor Peter Hardy. And the Licensing Committee, Councillor Peter Hardy will be replaced by Councillor Kath Harper. And can I please ask that Councillor Harper be given some training? That's the reason that Councillor Hardy has come off this committee, because he's repeatedly asked for training and hasn't been given any, and therefore he's not been able to serve on the committee. So can we please make sure that Councillor Harper does receive the training?
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Over a seconder. You need a seconder? No, we don't. No. Councillor Chedd.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just an observation on page 30, terms of reference for the Community Focus Scrutiny Committee. It still includes a reference to receiving reports from and scrutinising the work of member champions. And since we no longer have member champions, that part of it is now obsolete.
Right, I think that's going to be corrected. Put right. Anybody else wish to speak? Okay. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm not quite sure whether I need to. I would just like to say that, as I've sent an email to Tracy, I'm quite happy with the situation as it's recorded in the lists that we got. And providing they're not changed by anyone else for any other reason, I'm happy with them to stay as they are. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Right. Well, it's not contentious, so I intend to take the vote. If you're all in favour, please show. Anyone? Okay, that's clearly carried. Item 9. Can I invite Councillor Singleton to introduce this item, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Is this on?
Yeah.
Right. At the last audit meeting held in June, the committee considered a detailed report on the re-adoption of the Constitution. Normally there are a few changes. Tonight there are quite a few more, and they're mainly cosmetic, but the majority of tonight's changes came around by the input of Blackpool's monitoring officer during a recent interview process. So if I can take you through the changes, starting on page 47 of tonight's papers. And that is the Council's constitution requires the monitoring officer review and refer it to elected members each year about this time with any appropriate amendments. And tonight's members are asked to re-adopt the constitution with the following amendments. As I've already outlined, some were suggested by Mr. Mark Towers of Blackpool Council after a series of interviews. Mr. Towers described our constitution as an unfriendly document and suggested that a modular approach be taken which would be in line with the DETR, that's the Department of Environment, Transport and the Regions. The proposal is to reformat the filed constitution to reflect the DETR structure. And the changes are indicated on page 49 of the papers, starting with Article 2. And members of the Council, at para 2.2, it reads that election in terms of office of councillors refers to 2003 as the last election. So the proposal is to change the date of the last election to 2011. Article 4 refers to functions of full council, which allows it to change the number of members who comprise of the executive. Current legislation states that the leader can appoint between 2 and 9 councillors to the executive. So the proposal is to delete item 4 to ensure that the constitution is compliant with the current legislation. Item 7, or Article 7, refers again to limitation of 6 executive members. This proposal, as before, again is to ensure the constitution is compliant with current legislation. So the proposal is to amend para 702 and para 704 to ensure the constitution is compliant with current legislation. Also changing the word to read head of governance. That's to provide the authority to institute magistrates' court proceedings in case of non-compliance with planning contravention notices and enforcement notices, including stop notices. Concerning members of the executive, changes to fees and charges, the wording which would be better to read changes to fees and changes, which are estimated to generate up to £25,000 of additional income in any one year, to be determined by the service provider, which are estimated to generate that amount of money. Any impact on the council at this level would be approved by the council, and no expenditure can be incurred in the capital programme until a detailed breakdown has been given to Cabinet. So this proposal is to amend the delegation to reflect the revised officer structure and amend the delegations as outlined. Still on page 50 of this evening's papers now, on to 3.2. And that's selection of councillors on outside bodies. This deals with the timing of selection of councillors, and in a non-election year, this selection would be better dealt with at the council meeting preceding the AGM and not at the AGM in an election year. This has been the case of Fylde, and this formalises the situation. So the proposal is to make the amendments as suggested. At the bottom of page 53.3, special meetings, it's common practice to include the monitoring officer in the list of people who can call a special meeting. So the proposal is quite simply to add the monitoring officer to that list. Page 51, 3.4, that's notice and summons to meetings. The notice to attend the meetings was 3 days. This has been changed to 5 working days. So again, the proposal is to amend the paragraph to read 5 days instead of 3. Article 13. I do apologise, sorry. Article 13 is regarding the decision making and refers to a generic definition of a key decision, but does not refer to any limits. So the proposal is to add and agree a more detailed definition of a key decision and include it in the Constitution. If I can go to 3.5 on page 51. That's the chairman of meetings, and this refers to the mayor inviting the deputy mayor to conduct an ordinary or indeed a special meeting of the council. And that's the Schedule 12 of the Local Government Act 1972, and it clearly states that if the mayor is present at the meeting, then the mayor will preside, and the deputy mayor shall only preside if the mayor is absent. So the proposal is just to clarify this paragraph in the Constitution. Item 3.6 is on page 51, is notice of motion, and that's during the interviews conducted by Mark Towers of Blackpool Council. The process at Fylde was complicated, and it suggested that all notices of motion be debated at the council meeting, subject to them being proposed and seconded. And this would allow a more open debate and take place even if it's a cabinet function. So again, the proposal is that the notice of motion will automatically be debated at council meetings, subject to them being moved and seconded. Sorry, there's so many. Item 3...
Councillor Singleton, I was just wondering, because it's in such detail, do we need to go through every point?
I'm just making the council aware of all the changes. If you'd like me to just summarise now...
I just wondered if you'd summarise it.
Okay. What I would suggest is that I move that the council re-adopt the Constitution, incorporating the summary changes as outlined below, and I have a seconder in Councillor Pounder.
Thank you, Councillor Singleton. Okay, thank you. Right, Councillor Rhodes, I believe you have a question.
Yes, I do have a question, and it's on the recommendations, little 3, that consideration is given to the adoption of core competencies for members as developed by the Member Development Steering Group. And I believe the appendix, when you turn to it, I've really got to ask, what does this mean? For a start, the core competencies for ward councillors, I thought that we went to election every 4 years and were judged on that by our electorate. And I don't really think that this policy would be helpful to anybody. If we do adopt this, how on earth are we going to make sure that we call people to account? If people don't live up to these competencies, what kind of steps will be put in motion to deal with it? I just fear that this might be a waste of paper, and I just wonder whether we can come up with something that, if we are to have competencies, that we all know exactly what they mean and how they'll be dealt with.
Thank you. Councillor Singleton, can you respond to that?
Thank you, Councillor Rhodes. We are going through now, as part of the Member Development Committee, a series of PDPs. And as part of that PDP process, we are doing some core competencies to try and help councillors to see if we can follow or have the right competencies in place to perform our role. And just continuing from that, there is the meeting taking place now to define the core competencies for outside bodies, which will be presented to the Audit Committee in August. So I think what we have to do is put some lower level detail down just to make sure that we are touching base with those competencies. I hope that answers the question for Councillor Rhodes.
If I could just let Tracy come in here.
I think there is a report due back to the Audit Committee in September around looking at the core competencies for outside bodies. It may well be at this stage that in terms of the other competencies noted that you may just want to note those at this point. There will be a body of work done around outside bodies that will go back to the Audit Committee and then come back to the Council for ratification. And it may well be that you could revisit at that point whether you feel that you wish to adopt the core competencies that are set out in the agenda papers.
Okay.
Can we therefore take little 3 out this evening and revisit this sometime in the future then, please?
If I can respond to that, Mr. Mayor.
Right.
I'm quite happy to take that out of tonight's papers and revisit it at a later date, possibly in the next council meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the summary of the report here, it says that it basically says that not all the recommendations are in the appendix, the report that went to audit, which is fine. A lot of the recommendations here are as a result of Mark Tower's report. There were some, what I thought, very, very good recommendations in his report that that don't appear in the audit report and haven't been added subsequently. I'm referring specifically to his recommendation that at full council meetings there should be like a portfolio holders question time. I thought that would have been a very useful addition to full council meetings. So really I was just wondering if one of the if one of the portfolio holders could would to comment on why that recommendation wasn't included and hasn't been included in the report here.
Okay. Singleton to respond. Can you respond, Councillor Singleton, to the question?
Yes, I can respond to that. But we, I think, I'm not quite sure of the article, but we did include it to any question to be tabled at the council meeting, providing it be moved and seconded, even though it is a cabinet function. So it will be discussed and debated at the council meeting.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mulholland. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Sorry, I don't think that really answered the question that I asked.
Right.
The question was why it was deemed not a good thing to have a question and answer session, not a pre-notification of what the questions are going to be, but just members being able to ask questions of portfolio holders, and if they don't have the immediate answers, then they can defer the answer or give a written answer at a later stage. But I thought it was a good idea, and I'm afraid that didn't answer the question.
Right, Councillor Singleton, did you understand?
I did, Mr. Mayor, and it's under 3.6. The only comment I can offer is that we did discuss it, and we came to the conclusion that during the interview conducted by Mark Towers, that it would be a better facility for all notice of motions to be debated at full council. As I said before, subject to them being moved and seconded. Even though it is a cabinet function, they will be debated at full council. That is a very similar. It may not be the actual recommendation that the Mark Towers proposed, but that was our recommendation to full council.
Okay.
I think given that reference is being made to something that's not actually in the report tonight, though it's a valid point, the question hasn't been answered. In the absence of someone answering the question at the floor, it's something that we'll take up and try and get a response to.
Well, perhaps the fact that nobody's willing to answer the question is probably...
Right, Councillor Chedd, please. Oh, sorry, Councillor Mulholland, sorry, and Councillor Chedd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question of competence is one that I'm very interested in, because I think some of this springs from the community focused Task and Finish group of the Melton Grove, which reported back to the committee and went to cabinet, and there were sort of suggestions and question marks over competencies. And I take Councillor Oldie's point that ward councillors stand and are elected or otherwise, and after 4 years, if the electorate feels that they've done a good job, they will re-elect or otherwise. But the point is, once somebody's in position as a councillor, they're then in a situation where they can be given special responsibilities or positions of authority or positions representing as an outside bodies, positions on committees that make sort of quasi-legal or sometimes actual legal decisions there and then. And I do think, I'm not saying that this is necessarily the exact way to do it, but I do think there is, it's incumbent on us to make sure that people have the necessary competencies to deal with those decisions. So, I'm not saying that this is necessarily the right way to do it, but I think something needs to be in place. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Chedd, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is this working? I know with interest that a number of these changes tonight are actually undoing changes that have been done relatively recently within my time on this council, within the last 5 years, and they were done for particular, I think, political reasons, questionable reasons at particular times. So I welcome the fact that we're changing these, in some cases back to how they were, in other cases differently. Case in point, number 3.7 at the bottom of page 51, regarding recorded votes. We're proposing to go to a situation now where if five members have to request it in order to have a recorded vote, but this change was actually implemented at committee level as well as at full council level. So we need to think about how we implement this at committee level as well. So perhaps we're using 5 out of 50 for full council. Perhaps we go with the same proportion, or maybe we want to think about that offline somewhere. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you want to speak? Yeah.
I think the intention is that the rule will apply to committees, and you make a good point about the threshold around the number of 5. Perhaps that may be a little high for committees, but I think in the meantime we'll have a threshold of 5 at committees, and that's something that I'll look to review and make an amendment on in discussion with group leaders.
We're also looking at adjusting the quorums on some of these committees. I think it's possible now that we may have committees that are quorum with less than 5 members.
Yes.
So in those situations we'd have the recorded vote if that number requested it, yes?
You're correct, and I will adjust the number, but I think rather than just doing it now this evening off the cuff, absolutely, I'll do it in consultation with group leaders.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hayhurst.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I also welcome many of these proposals, but in particular 3.6. The fact that notices of motion will in future be debated at full council, I think that is a major step forward to reintroducing democracy in this council chamber. I do feel that it will also take away a lot of the bitterness that there's been in this council in past years when there's been infighting as to whether or not it should be, an item should be considered. I would only say that I hope that this is the forerunner of removing the cabinet system. I know the ruling group has voted to retain it, but I do hope that they will reconsider and put us back to a situation where democracy comes back to Fylde Borough Council and we remove one of the worst aspects of legislation which I feel that the previous Labour government introduced. I just hope that you'll listen to it, please.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. I've got Councillor Davis, but I'm not sure if you put your hand up right. Councillor Silverwater, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Really, this is for Tracy. She said earlier that going to audit in the future, we'll be looking at audit will be looking at the competencies of the outside bodies. Perhaps, if that's going to audit, they could also look at the competency of the committee chairman and also cabinet members. So it has been mentioned earlier by one member that perhaps they should come back later, sometime in the future to council. And I do think this is something that we should be looking at in more detail.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fylde? No. Councillor Henshaw? No? No? I don't.
You're making
up as I go along. Does anybody else like to speak? All right.
I don't think it's contentious.
No, I don't think it's contentious. So we will. Oh, Councillor Rhodes.
Can I ask Mr. Mayor, are we taking little 3 out?
Oh.
Yeah, I think that was confirmed by...
Yeah. Is everybody happy that we take little 3 out? Councillor... Right, thank you. Right. We'll vote on little 3 being taken out first. Is that right?
Yeah.
Do we need a seconder?
No, just a second.
Oh, yeah. Right, all those in favour?
No, the substantive.
Right. Now the substantive motion.
Those in favour of the main recommendation.
Those in favour? You're confusing me. Right, are we all in favour? Is anybody against? Just one? No, I know, I can't. Thank you. Agenda item 10. I'd like to invite Councillor Reeves to introduce this item, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Code of Conduct adoption. In addition to the order papers and the recommendations that are on page 57 of the order papers, I'd like to say the purpose of this report is for the Council to agree a revised Code of Conduct and arrangements for dealing with complaints of misconduct against borough, parish or town councillors, together with any co-opted members which might arise in the future. In particular, I'd like to draw members' attention to updated definitions of members' interests, including the new mandatory pecuniary interests. This microphone's going a bit funny. Following this council meeting, members will have 28 days to register these new interests with the council's monitoring officer, and paperwork has been sent to all members in this regard. Training on the new Code of Conduct will now be arranged at the earliest opportunity following its approval this evening. As dealt with earlier, appointing committees, the Standards Committee is now comprised of elected members with no independent members and town parish councillors appointed in line with the new legislation. With this in mind, I would like to personally thank Mr Birchall, who has acted as independent chairman of the Standards Committee, for his excellent input in recent years, together with other former members of the Standards Committee. I understand Mr Birchall intends to continue to work with the Council over the forthcoming 12 months as an independent person in line with the new requirements of the new legislation, and I welcome this. The definitions of these new disclosable pecuniary interests have already given rise to a number of members having an interest in the High Street Innovation Fund matter. It is therefore recommended that as so many members are affected by this, that dispensations are given, and I will ask the monitoring officer to read out a list of those members who have requested such dispensation in writing in advance of this meeting. I would like to recommend the acceptance of the Code of Conduct, as outlined in tonight's order papers, to include all the recommendations, and I do have the seconder.
Thank you.
I stand to second.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you want to read these names out first and then,
yes,
please?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. And the list of members who've requested a dispensation with respect to the High Street Innovation Fund item are Councillors Nigel Goodrich, Peter Collins, Charlie Duffy, Simon Cox, Viv Wilder, Elaine Silverwood, Trevor Fiddler, Edward Nash, Barbara Nash, Albert Pounder, Karen Buckley, Fabian Craig Wilson, David Chedd, Tim Ashton, Thomas Trelfall, Heather Speak and Kieran Mulholland, and we're recommending that a dispensation would be in place for a 6-month period after this meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Rhodes?
I realise that we have to adopt this code of conduct tonight, but whoever's written it, I think it's a bit of a dog's dinner. And I think there's going to be more work needed doing to it. I know that there is an awful lot of confusion in a lot of local authorities about particularly the pecuniary interest part. So I hope that we'll continue to monitor what's going on nationally with regard to this code of conduct, and I hope that we will perhaps see more clarity over the next year.
Thank you. And Councillor Duffy?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to clarify that my request for a dispensation was just a general suggestion for all councillors with businesses. I don't personally have a business, so I don't need a dispensation, in this case at least.
Thank you. Any more speakers? Councillor Chedd?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Sorry to bother you with detail again, but throughout this there is a number of references to co-opted members, as if they should be treated in some way differently to members who found their way into positions of office through the usual route. But there's nothing in here where it actually distinguishes between the two and says that anything is different. So I just don't see the need to discriminate against co-opted members. Once they're in place and they've signed their acceptance of office, they're the same as anybody else. So that was the first thing. And secondly, I just wanted a bit more clarification on what the leader said regarding the independent members. You've named, one of them was named, but I think there was reference to others having expressed an interest as well. I was wondering if this is something that the individual had initiated himself, or have we gone out and asked all of them if they want to continue to be involved? Are we able, under the new arrangements, to let those people continue to be involved? Thank you.
I found that really hard to understand, so... Councillor Reeves, if you want to respond.
Mr Mayor, that Councillor Chedd was referring to the independent members of the public who sat on the Standards Committee.
Right.
And I think it is now new legislation that dictates that the Standards Committee comprises of elected members.
Yes, if I could confirm that that's correct. Under the terms of the new legislation, there are no longer independent members on the Council Standards Committee. There will be independent persons that are appointed. They cannot be a formal member of the Standards Committee. They are there in an advisory capacity. So if there is a complaint against a member, that they can act as a counsel to that particular councillor who's had the complaint against them. So we are complying with the new legislation in terms of reconstituting our Standards Committee. In terms of co-opted members, as far as I'm aware, we don't actually have any co-opted members, but if we did have co-opted members, they would be bound to the Council's Code of Conduct, just like any of our own members.
Okay, does that help?
Yeah, we do have co-opted members on parish councils in the borough. With regard to the point the leader discussed, I understand the distinction, yes, between the members of that Standards Committee and the other independent persons. But, and apologies if I used the wrong terms when I spoke earlier, but I still didn't get an answer, I don't think, to the question about the independent persons. How are we going to decide which independent persons are going to be used in that consultancy role and which aren't?
If I can help, within the body of the report, it does detail that through work that we're doing in partnership with Blackpool Council, that across the two councils we will be going out to recruitment for at least 2 independent persons, and it's the intention that they will work across both Blackpool and Fylde Council. If either council, or indeed any council, has independent members who wish to stay on in some role, they are permitted to do so, but only for a period of 12 months. So, for example, Mr. Birchall has indicated that he would like to now carry on as an independent person under the new rules of procedures, and he will fulfil that role, but can only do so for 12 months. So there's a need to go out and recruit some new independent persons across both this council and Blackpool Council, and it will be a recruitment and selection procedure.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Councillor Henshaw. Thank you. Any more questions? Councillor Hayhurst.
It's just a comment, Mr. Mayor. I'm delighted that Mr. Birchall has agreed to stay on for 12 months because he's done an excellent job as chairman of the Standards Committee, and I do think it's a big loss that he can't stay on as a member. He's done a great job, and I do welcome the fact that he's going to stay on and help the members who are now being put on the committee and help them and advise them as they go along.
Yep. Any more questions? Okay. We'll take the vote. It's not contentious. All those in favour? Thank you. Any against? No? Right. Thank you. Agenda item 11. I'd like to invite Councillor Reeves to introduce this item, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendations and the summary as on page 73 of tonight's order papers. The Council makes a number of appointments to outside bodies which are confirmed each year by the Council. A list of appointments together with details of any vacancies is attached in the appendix, and the recommendation is that the Council confirms appointments to the outside bodies in line with the details shown in the attached appendix, and nominations are sought to fill any vacancies as indicated. Might I also add that there is a vacancy for the Fylde and Wyre Health and Wellbeing Partnership, to which I would like to nominate Councillor Little. I would make one detail alteration, And if members could please look at page 1 with regards to the local liaison committee at Springfield Works, that has myself and Councillor Trelfall as the members. I remember 12 months ago forfeiting that position to allow Councillor Collins to be able to sit on that liaison committee. Those are the only amendments I propose, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
And I do have a second.
Thank you. Councillor Pounder, to second this.
Yeah, I stand to second that.
Thank you. Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, about 12 months ago, I seem to remember that it was said that members on outside bodies would be asked to provide reports for the council. I just wonder when the council can expect to receive these reports and which committee it will go to, whether it's an overview and scrutiny or whether it's full council.
Right, can anybody? Oh, Tracy?
Yes, as part of the work that's being done on developing a new protocol with respect to outside bodies, it was reported to the Audit Committee that the reporting procedure that had previously been commenced was to be just put on hold until that new protocol was developed. That protocol will be reported to the Audit Committee in the autumn, and that will have contained within it some new reporting arrangements for members who sit on outside bodies. That said, a number of members who do sit on outside bodies did complete the reporting forms, and if anybody wants to review those documents, they're quite welcome to do so, and I have them in my office for any member to review. There isn't a fully complete set of reports, but nevertheless, whatever documents I do have is open for members to review.
Okay. Any more questions? Councillor Duffy?
Thank you. Sorry, Tracy, could I just suggest that perhaps you could just email them out, or rather than us having to come looking for them? Would that not be an idea?
Put them in the members' room. Yeah. We're happy to put them in the members' room, for example. They are in hard-written format, so if I just leave the file in the members' room, and that way when members are in, you could review them in that way.
Okay, is everybody happy with that? Any more questions? Right, we'll take the vote. All those in favour? That's clearly carried, thank you. Item 12, can I please invite Councillor Fylde to introduce this item, please?
Is this any work for you, Lord? Is this the good one? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. May I say you look rather resplendent today. Resplendid in the spotlight. And can I hope that your stewardship of this council is an enjoyable one?
Thank you.
Right, where are we? Item 12. I think before the council we have a very comprehensive and detailed report, and hopefully I can be rather brief. It may be beneficial to some if I go right to the beginning and try and give a very brief summary of why we are where we are. Once the government agreed that Warton become an enterprise zone and acquired the status of enterprise zone, it was then incumbent of the local planning authority to determine what is called a local development order. And this is a strategic document whose aim and purpose is to speed up and possibly and hopefully reduce some of the bureaucracy that's normally associated with the planning process. In the evolution of the local development order, is this the best we've got? What? Right. in the evolution of the local development order, the planning department were very conscious that Warton was totally different to the site at Salisbury in South Ribble, the distinguishing feature being that the Salisbury site is open countryside, and Warton, as I think we can all appreciate, is surrounded on three sides by residential development. To the west we have Mill Lane, to the north we have Lytham Road, and to the east we have the properties Rydal and Lammerleach areas within Freckleton. So that was one of the major differences between the two development orders. The development order, the draft development order, was agreed by this council. It was agreed by the Lancashire County Council, and it was agreed by BAE. Then, having had these consultees agreement, it went out to public consultation. And I think you can see within the body of the report that the public consultation was extremely comprehensive. And I think we can summarise the result of that consultation in saying that substantially the draft order that went out to consultation is basically the document that we are hopefully going to adopt this evening. And therefore the recommendations described in the order paper would have followed accordingly. However, there's been a slight hiccup because in the evolution of the development order itself, we obviously consulted Natural England. And they had no problems. They agreed with our position. The ecologists at Lancashire County Council agreed with our position. And out of the blue, we received a letter on the 24th of July, after your agenda had been published and circulated, again from Natural England, but not from the same person who we had consulted previously. And in this letter, alarmingly, she states that because of the proximity of the Warton site to the estuary and its treble SSI status, that it was her opinion that a full employment impact assessment was needed. Now, if that's the case, then we would not be able to adopt this item on the agenda this evening and could delay the process by many, many months. A full environmental impact assessment is an extremely substantial document. We have spent the last few days trying to clarify the position of Natural England and why there is an anomaly between one officer and another. The officer who wrote the letter on the 24th of July has taken up a new position and has agreed now that a full environmental impact is not needed. There's always a danger when you're dealing with environmental issues of a legal challenge, and it has been the advice that rather than a full environmental impact assessment, we simply have to carry out a habitat. I'm going to read this because it's language which I'm sure most of us don't really appreciate. To carry out a habitat regulation screening exercise, and this requires that the recommendation before you has to be modified, because while the recommendation states that this goes to the Secretary of State for its endorsement, and he has 21 days to do that, we have to carry out this slightly different type of environmental exercise, and therefore the new recommendation is that subject to this order, this exercise being carried out before it goes to the Secretary of State, or while it goes to the Secretary of State. Chief Executive, do you want to read out? You're in the spotlight, and I'm just trying to read without my glasses that you'd probably make more sense than I. So could you read out the amended recommendation to Council, please?
If I had possession of it, I would read it out. I do have possession of it. Right, this is the update that I received after some consultation this afternoon, led by Councillor Fylde. Whilst the Council has received some consultation responses in regard to the environmental impact assessment screening exercise, there are still some outstanding comments that will need to be taken into account in the decision-making process. Accordingly, it has not been possible to complete the environmental impact assessment screening exercise. The environmental impact assessment screening has, however, confirmed the need to carry out a separate screening opinion in accordance with the Conservation of Habitats and Species regulations. It's got a three-lettered acronym, HSA, I think. Accordingly, the recommendation included in the agenda requires amendment. Revised recommendation. Number 1, that the Council considers the comments raised during the consultation process, notes the responses to those comments, and the proposed changes to the final local development order. Number 2, that the proposed local development order, with statement for reasons and location plan, as set out in Appendix 1, be approved for referral to the Secretary of State for confirmation in accordance with paragraph 11, Article 34 of the Town and Country Planning Order 2010. And number 3, that subject to the Secretary of State confirming that he does not intend to make a direction under section 61B, open brackets 1, close brackets, of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990, as amended, the completion of a screening opinion in accordance with the Town and Country Planning Environmental Impact Assessment Regulations 1999, and a screening opinion in accordance with the Conservation of Habitats and Species Regulations 2010, the LDO is formally adopted by the resolution of the Council. Full stop. If you wish.
I thank you for that. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I think you're better reading it than I. Just to say, while that seems extremely technical, extremely complicated, in the way it's written it is, but in the real world, the exercise is a relatively simple one, and in terms of officer time, within 2 days, that particular document will be in place and sent along with this report to the Secretary of State. So I apologise for the technical nature of that recommendation or amended recommendation. I did qualify it earlier by saying, simply in this wonderful new world we live in, to avoid the potential for challenge, we have to write it in that particular way. And why it hasn't been on the desk in front of you prior to the commencement of this meeting is simply we only came to a conclusion, having agreed this position with BAE and Lancashire County Council only half an hour or so before we met here at 6:30. So can I just hope and ask all members of this council, I think you all realise just how important this item on the agenda is in terms of employment in Fylde. I hope you can support the recommendation, the amended recommendation. I thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Balfour, second it. Thank you. Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, Councillor Julie Brickles can't be here tonight, so she's asked me to raise something, and I don't know whether the portfolio holder will be able to help me with this. She says she's had a number of people contact her saying that there are no time limits put onto the firms of when they can actually open in the morning, when they shut in the evening, and working at weekends. Is the portfolio holder able to help in any way with that?
I'm not too sure, but as always, I'll try. I think we can all agree that the sentiment within the development order has been primarily to protect residents who are already on the borders of the BAE. In terms of that type of detail, in terms of when businesses are allowed to operate, I am not sure. It could be And if you read the report, throughout the report, there's constant reference made to the master plan. And I would have thought the master plan is secondary to the strategic document of the development order, but I think it will encompass detail in terms of the sentiment expressed in Councillor Rickles' question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I ask the portfolio holder if he'll bear in mind the comments made, and if there is any way he can help, I'm sure he'll do so.
Yeah, I think that's important. Councillor Rigby?
Mr. Mayor, I welcome this development. Portfolio holder bear in mind privacy of the residents at the rear of Rydal Avenue. I'm sure it will.
Well, I think in my presentation I did make reference that, that those residents who presently are on the 3 boundaries of British aerospace were given preferential treatment, and that were considered in great detail. That we couldn't allow just a development to take place. South Ribble at Salisbury, it's totally different. It is in total open countryside, and they didn't have to consider residences. But I think when you look at the development order itself, you can realise we put great emphasis on protecting our residents.
Thank you. Yep, it's important that we do. Right, are there any more questions? Right. I don't think it's contentious, so we'll take a vote. All those in favour? Thank you. That's clearly carried. Right, that concludes the business. Before we finish, because I was so nervous when I sat down, I forgot to welcome Councillor Barbara Nash to the Council. Welcome. Okay, thank you very much everybody for giving me such an easy time this evening.